Hi guys, how we all doing? First of all, let me profusely apologise for the length it has been since I put anything up in this medium. There have been 100 reasons and none, if that makes any sense, but the most obvious and serious of said reasons was that about a month or 6 weeks ago now, I got struck down with a very bad dose of cellulitis. For anyone that's not familiar with the demon of a thing, cellulitis is a form of blood poisoning. Nobody is exactly sure how you end up getting it, but my guess would be that I got a little bit of a scrape off the footplate on my wheelchair, and I would imagine that is how the damn thing started. But now I got it before during the summer, and it wasn't it wasn't pleasant, but it was nowhere near as bad as what the most recent incarnation of it turned out to be. I came home from the rehab centre, which I attend 4 days a week now, and hopefully we're not far off being back up to 5. But I come home from rehab one evening, and the only way I can describe it to you is like it was as if my entire body decided to go into spasm at the same time, which, as anyone that has ever come across a spasm or knows anything about them will know that it is not a comfortable state of being at all now. Because basically, and people laugh when I say this, but having researched it and read up on it myself a good bit, it's the only plausible description that I can possibly come up with. It's as I take one of my spasm tablets now while I'm thinking about it, while I'm talking about it. I do often say to people, I can only imagine what rigor mortis would feel like if one was allowed, or not allowed, but if one was able to feel it, and I imagine that's what it must equate to. But as I say, that evening I come home from the rehab, the spasms were so bad it was nearly as if my entire body had gone into some sort of shock, as if the spasms end of it wasn't bad enough. It then felt to me as if I was going to vomit, but then when I hate saying this, when I tried to vomit, then there was nothing would happen for me. The upshot of it was, anyway, I had no dinner that evening. I fell asleep in the chair, and as Susie got my carer to come back early, and the carer nearly fainted when she saw how unwell I looked. Between the two of them, they put me into bed anyway, and I know Susie was nearly afraid to go asleep on the night in question, such was how woeful I looked. And I actually do have a photograph of it, but I'm not going to share it for the simple reason that I find it too distressing myself to look at without displaying it to the entire world. But anyway, eventually Susie managed to get through my stubbornness the next morning and got me down to my GP, and by that stage my two legs had swelled up like balloons, which is classic red flag territory for cellulitis. So when my GP eventually saw me in a sort of emergency type situation, she actually informed me that the dose of cellulitis on this occasion was that bad that by right she could have sent me up to the A&E in Connolly Hospital up the road, but in fairness to her, she was sensible enough to know that sending me up there at 5 o'clock on a Friday evening would have been about as useful now as trying to give a cow a bank holiday Monday off. So look, while it probably was the case that intravenous antibiotics probably were required, given all the hoops one would have had to jump through in order to get them, rightly or wrongly, I just felt it wasn't worth the I won't say risk, but it wasn't worth the hassle, and I was willing to risk not going the intravenous route rather than bringing all the baggage onto myself that going the intravenous route would have entailed. So I will admit that it took 4.5 weeks of oral antibiotics to get rid of the cellulitis out of my legs altogether. To be honest about it, the last of it only left my right leg in the middle of last week now, but as any of you who have been tuned into the website or any of our social media outlets will know that I have been hammering out articles on the keyboard as quickly and as regularly as is possible. Thankfully, and I nearly dread saying these words because it's sure as God put the mockers on the situation, but thankfully the sporting world appears to be coming back to normality. I was only remarking to somebody over the weekend that I've already been to more GAA matches this year than I would say has been the case for about the last 2 years. Now the next little milestone to be crossed, I want to get back to Fairyhouse and get back into gold racing, and what's not, that will be the next item to be crossed off the agenda as soon as it is possible. I'm actually not sure whether there's another meeting in Fairyhouse before Easter. In actual fact, thinking about it, I doubt there is, because we're here on the 8th of March, and sure, Easter, if my calculations are right, Easter is only a little bit more than a month away. So knowing the way Peter Rowe and his staff look after the ground over there in the run up to the Easter meeting, I would be very surprised if there was another one over there. Now, of course, the thing about it is the Easter meeting, more or less, I think there's one more after, but the Easter meeting more or less spells the end of jump racing at the local track for the season. Already yesterday, Leopardstown had their last jump meeting of their season, and you know, while obviously it means Cheltenham was getting closer, and indeed they had the Cheltenham gallops after racing yesterday. Now, I would be brutally honest and say I completely forgot about it, about them. I may have a look online later just to see did anything jump out as working particularly well or not, although I know from previous years' experience that you know, you never want to read too much into these things either. It's like it's like a challenge match in GAA, or a friendly in soccer or rugby or whatever comparison one wants to use. There's absolutely nothing to compare with the actual race setting itself, so you wouldn't want to read too much into it. But look, even though I know from a personal perspective Cheltenham is going to be so difficult this year, it being the first one without Dad, and you know, I don't mind admitting that I do find it quite difficult now to watch racing, even though I love it and adore it, and it's a big part of my life and a big part of what I do from one day to the next. I do find it quite hard watching the racing. Now, this is going to sound like a bit of a contradiction, but I think and hope people might understand. I find it hard watching the racing on my own, but at the same time, I kind of have to be on my own watching it, if that makes any sense. I'm sure it doesn't, but look, of course we'll be tuning into Cheltenham next week, and whether I watch most of it at home or over in the rehab centre with the lads. I don't know. My instinct, I suppose, is to say most of it. Well, definitely the Thursday and Friday will be at home, because Thursday being St. Patrick's Day and Friday being a bank holiday, the rehab won't be open. Now, I know there are some people who will no doubt head to a watering hole to watch the action. Indeed, I do know of people that used to reserve their annual week's holidays every year to coincide with the horse racing Olympics, as they call it, at Prestbury Park. But look, it will be different, definitely. There's no point in saying it won't. But we'll be tuning in, and more than that, I would hope to do fairly extensive previews for each day, hopefully before each day. I haven't decided what way I'm going to go about it, whether I'll type them out and do them as a written article or record them like this. And I'm leaning slightly towards recording them, and maybe for the one and only time each year, working off a prepared script. But I'll decide later in the week. I'm sort of, if you were to ask me to weigh it up, I would say it's nearly 70-30 in favour of doing it on video with the prepared script at this stage. And the only reason I would be going down the prepared script route would be to go through it race by race and horse by horse, if it's required. I mean, every year I know people talk about bankers and who'll win this race and who'll win that race, and I know, naturally enough and deservedly so, Honeysuckle will once again be, I'm sure, earmarked as not only the Irish banker, but the banker for the meeting for a lot of people. But of course she still has to go and do it. But I don't believe that there's anything in the race that she's raced against before, at least, that there's any reason why they should reverse form with her. But as I have said, she still has to go and do it, I suppose, so you can never really count your chickens until they hatch, I suppose you'd say. One needs only to think of the couple of years where I think it was Vroom Vroom Mag was definitely one of the mares that come down in the mare's hurler, when there was a multitude of multiple bets riding on it, including some on behalf of yours truly, or indeed an even more recent example, when the Gary Moore trained Goshen appeared to have the champion, or the Triumph Hurdle rather, won, only to go head over tip at the last and hand victory to the Willie Mullins train burning victory. So imperious and all as Honeysuckle may look, she will still have to go and do it. So but if one wanted to be analytical and try and see, well, if there is going to be an upset, or if there's not, who might follow her in, well, I suppose if there something I have got very used to looking into lately is if there's a race with a particularly short price favourite, I will actually look into the betting without market, and I would imagine as regards the Champion Hurl that the betting without market will most likely be headed by the Willie Mullins train Appreciated. Now outside of that one, I think the Gordon Elliott pair, Tiahupu and Zanahir, who this time last year would have been favourite or very near to it for the Triumph Hurdle, also warrant the utmost respect. Perhaps Tiahupu in particular, because to this observer at least, that one has come in under the radar, but at the same time has been steadily improving with every run that it has got. So in conclusion, if you were to ask me, I don't see anything beating Honeysuckle, but I would not at all be surprised if it ended up being an Irish 1, 2, 3, 4 with the Wonder Mare winning, please God, and Appreciated and the Gordon Elliott pair in behind, in whichever order one likes. But I won't go on too much more about Cheltenham, because the simple fact of the matter is that I would hope to have a very large amount of coverage both before and during the action in Prestbury Park next week. So just to round off, I suppose the other major talking point in the world at the moment has been the invasion of Ukraine by Vladimir Putin and the Russians, and I know there were some murmurings and misgivings last week when it was noted that yours truly had wrote a few bits pertaining to what was going on in that region, and the talk was that it's nothing to do with sport, and why are you putting it on a sports website and that type of thing. Well, for one thing, if you look at the tagline of our site, it clearly says life and sport from an armchair view, so that should explain that. And more than that, of course, sport, like almost every other facet of life, has been and is being and will be affected by the ongoing conflict in the Ukraine region for some time to come. Now, I can totally understand the major powers of the world imposing sanctions upon Vladimir Putin, both personally and in terms of his government, owing to the illegal and nefarious actions they have carried out in Ukraine. Indeed, you would slightly in one way wonder why it took until the current ongoing situation for such steps to be taken, given that they had already at that point, as far as can be ascertained, illegally acquired the Crimea region, and one wonders why it took so long for the international community to act. Now, I know the other side of it is that, you know, action had to be taken, and in fairness, eventually was, but I suppose there is one little bit of regret on my part in that, while excluding Russian teams and competitors might be totally understandable in one sense, from another angle, it surely must be the case that there are clean and straight Russian athletes who don't fall into the what is basically a state-sponsored doping culture, and those who do want to do things properly and do things cleanly are now nearly being punished owing to the megalomaniacal doings and utterances of the country's maniac president, and it's probably not fair that the genuine right thinking and right competing athletes should get stung over the actions of the what are very much in the minority of Russians, I would assume, but it'd be interesting to see how that plays out and what impact it will have on the sporting world going forward. But for now, that will do. I just said I'd check in because it had been far too long since I posted anything on this particular platform. Please do stay tuned, because as I say, possibly from the weekend, or if not from the weekend, certainly from Monday, we will have extensive coverage, previews and reviews of the Cheltenham Festival in the build up to Tuesday's opening day, and then throughout the rest of the week. And of course, besides that, we will hopefully have our usual wide variety of content for your perusal and enjoyment to keep the show on the road. Thank you very much for looking in. It's good to be back on this platform, and I will talk to you all near the weekend, please God.